Welcome into the Where You're Going podcast. I'm your host, John Liddle. It is wonderful to have you along for another show. We believe that it's not about where you've been, it's about where you're headed and who you are becoming on this show. And we thank each and every one of you that has listened, that has tuned in on YouTube, anywhere else that you're getting the show. It really means a lot to us, every single person that has been impacted along the way. And the best way you can make sure that other people are getting hope too is by sharing the show. So go ahead and do that. Other ways, hey, just like it, comment on it, give it 5 stars. In fact, if you're watching on YouTube right now, just comment right down there. Tell us about your favorite episode so far of the Where You're Going podcast. We want to hear all about it. Steve Gamlin is on the show this week. You know how the Bible says, where there is no vision, the people perish. Well, that's definitely something that Steve believes because he is all about vision. He's all about visioning your future and going after it. And he has a wonderful story of reclamation and redemption in so many areas of his life. I'm so pleased to bring on my new friend, Steve Gamlin.
Thank you, John. Very happy to be here.
And you're a motivational speaker, the motivational firewood guy, and that's even got a little trademark by it. I don't own any trademarks. You own one, so that puts you one up on me. That's good. But Steve blends positivity and visualization. I'm excited about that. Storytelling, humor, and helps you see your desired outcomes, understand your why, and build action plans to achieve as well. So I'm really looking forward to having the chance to talk with you about this, Steve. Well, let's start here, though. Let's get to the nitty gritty, the tough stuff, because a couple times in your life, you've been in a spot where you didn't want to be, and one of those situations, found yourself just kind of by your own doing. At rock bottom. What was that like? Tell us that story.
Yeah, the more recent of the rock bottoms happened about 21 years ago after a successful 10 years of radio where I burnt myself into the ground, pure exhaustion. My first marriage was crumbling due to lack of communication and frustration. And I walked away from radio, went through a divorce, and at age 35, I was about $62,000 in debt because I had not been watching where the money was going. So broken, depressed, moved back into Dad's house and started from there. It was, I'm old enough to remember at age 55 the metaphor. I was like Wile E. Coyote strapping up a pair of Acme rocket roller skates and just driving himself off a cliff to the bottom of the canyon and not catching the Roadrunner again. So that was the low point about 20 years ago. And it's funny because God sends us, angels and gives us moments and gives us enough, leeway, time and space to potentially damage ourselves, but then learn something in the process. And I sure did about, it's almost 20 years, August of 2003. Had $3 left in my pocket on a Friday afternoon and decided to take out my frustrations and self-deprecation on a $3 bucket of golf balls. And went to a nearby driving range. And I was hitting 200 plus yards. That's just how much I hated myself at the time. Some of my best drives ever. And I was underneath these big steel power lines because I went to the farthest tee box so I wouldn't damage any cars in the parking lot. And a thunderstorm came through. It was very hot and humid. So I stood there for an hour hitting golf balls, barefoot in the wet grass, under power lines, and at one point even held up the club and dared the lightning to hit me.
Wow.
And hit my bucket of golf balls, hit the buckets of 2 guys who ran from the storm and never came back. And when I got back to my car, I could barely lift my arms. And as soon as I opened my door, the rain stopped and the sun came out. And I just looked up and I just started laughing. Like, that is well played. And, even to this day, whenever I hear thunder, I go, oh my gosh, God is still laughing at that incident, because me and God, we have a great relationship, communication, conversations daily. The day after that, I was on the phone with a brand new life coach. And he said, how was your week? And I just said, put down your pen and listen to this. And as funny as I could make it, super self-deprecating, but very funny, I told him about that hour. And he asked a question that changed my life. Have you ever thought of being a motivational speaker or stand-up comedian? Within 2 weeks, my first stand-up comedy class, a week after that, my first Toastmasters meeting, and here we are.
Wow. And 20 years later, you have made a life out of helping other people, maybe even see the humor in yourself, but the humor in themselves as well. And I want to go back to just that moment you're hitting that $3 bucket of golf balls. It sounds like you were mad at yourself, but you were mad at God a little bit.
Very down on myself. I had always been a very self-deprecating person anyway, because I could get laughs doing it. Now,
Mm,
the sad part is I didn't realize the damage I was doing to myself. I just knew I was getting laughs. It's, I look back now and I'm like, I was kind of like a circus clown that
yeah.
got tripped up, fell down, and got pies in his face all day long at the big top and made people laugh. But at the end, when the lights were turned off and the tents got rolled up, he walked home alone in the dark crying.
Mm,
And I didn't get what I was doing to myself at the time. And actually, I was not mad at God at all. I was thankful to still be around. And I equate it to, if you've seen the movie Forrest Gump with Lieutenant Dan, during the hurricane, he was up in the crow's nest of their shrimp boat,
yeah.
screaming at the storm, "Come on, blow! Is that all you got?" I was mad at life, and I was mad at what I did to my own. I mean, I certainly couldn't blame anybody but myself. Lack of communication, frustration, overwork, exhaustion, everything. I mean, when you run a machine too long and you don't take care of it, and all of a sudden you go, "What's that clanging and where's that smoke coming from?"
Mm.
That was my life at the time. And the funny part is, knowing we were going to be on this call, I dug out the actual golf club I was holding up that day. Noticed the lack of lightning marks on it because God has a sense of humor. I think I've only taken it golfing once since then in all these years. And every time I pick it up, I'm smiling right now. And I'm like, I just think of God going, "Look, I gave you a free pass once. Don't do it if there's thunder and lightning."
Well, it really does give you a good visual aid, though, when you're able to pull that out and say, "This is what I tempted God with right here." He didn't take me up on it. But if you wouldn't have done that, you wouldn't have had the story to tell your life coach, who eventually was like, "Come on, Steve, I see something in you." And you were talking about the self deprecation, how we can do damage to ourselves. I certainly relate to that. Sometimes it takes, a lot of times it takes somebody else believing in us and pouring into us and seeing something in us for us to believe it about ourselves. How is that true for you?
It is true, because even though he started to set that realization in motion, I didn't get the full lesson for another decade. I spent the first
Mm,
decade of the new millennium still being pretty self deprecating, still referring to myself as an idiot in a number of speeches that I presented in Toastmasters and on stages. And in 2011, a guy who I just recently at that time met invited me to speak on one of his stages. And I spoke for all 3 days at a motivational event. And on the
wow.
third day, I woke up in a bad mood and I was running out of material. And I went on this self deprecating rant in the middle of it. And I was getting some laughs, but the energy wasn't quite right. And I wasn't picking up on it. And I was the final speaker. We thanked everybody, go home. And he comes over, he points at me and he goes, "Sit." And he put a
Mm,
circle of chairs around me. Him and the other 5 speakers intervened on me and completely destroyed me for what I was doing to myself. And my friend told me, "Look, if I ever catch you talking about yourself like that again, you will never be welcome on one of my stages."
wow.
That was when the lesson finally kicked in. And I refer to it now as, I said, "Yeah, my buddy Chris kicked me with some steel toe boots and parts of my body my doctor only gets to see once a year. But it flipped the switch." It's like trying to hit that farmer's tractor to get it to run right. He did it, and I finally got the lesson. And it flipped my speaking 180 degrees in
Mm.
how I honored my audiences and myself. And wouldn't you know it, my business grew because of that and because of the energy I was actually putting out.
I love that. The concept of honoring yourself. We think of honoring others, and, certainly a biblical practice to honor others above yourself. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that, But if we honor ourselves and then we honor others above ourselves, hey, we're doing an even better job. So how do you try to honor yourself now? What does it look like? How is it different?
For me, it starts in the mirror first thing in the morning. And I borrow from a speaker named Mel Robbins. She's very
Mm,
big in personal development and coaching. She has these two things. One's called the 5 second rule. The other is the high five habit.
mm,
So when my alarm goes off at 5:15 in the morning for my workout, within 5 beeps, I turn it off. In my head, I go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Both feet are touching the floor. I lean back, kiss my wife Tina on the cheek, jump up, turn on the bathroom lights, which are blinding. And the first thing I do in the mirror, with only 1/10 of one eye even open, but a huge smile, as I high five myself in the mirror and I look up and I wink and I go, we're going to have a rocking day. And I just, you and me in the mirror, God, you and me, let's go have a rocking day. I just start off so pure in the morning with great energy. And of course, being in the entertainment world for the past 31 years, there's already a classic rock song playing in my head, which will be the first song of my workout when I get downstairs. I have to sing it to myself first. Then I play that and I'll listen to positive podcasts. I listen to positive messaging. I listen to educational programs. Then I come down here after my workout and I meditate here in the studio, do a little guided imagery and meditation, get nice and calm and peaceful, and then go write my gratitude journal, jump in the shower, start my day.
fantastic. And it sounds like these are things that you have, like you said, Mel Robbins picked up along the way and pieced together over time and probably can change a little bit over time as well. How do you know when it's time to adopt a habit and when it's time to kick it on out of there? Let's try something new.
When I feel my energy or my connection to something waning,
Hmm.
it may take a few days because maybe you're just having an odd energy day. But when that part of a routine or a habit comes up and you're going, you don't have to be married to a habit forever. I mean, gosh, I got rid of so many bad habits over the years and routines and natural tendencies that I just keep finding better ways. I surround myself with better people. One of the things I do wherever I go, when I get out of my car, I look up and wink, and then I look around and say, how can I leave this situation better than I found it in just one way?
Hmm.
Greatest habit I ever adopted or created or was given to me, whatever. But oh my gosh, it elevates me. So much so that if I'm having a frustrated day or I'm down or a project isn't going well or I've accidentally written the same article 3 times and deleted it 3 times because I haven't saved it properly. Kind of almost happened last night. I deleted it once and almost deleted it twice. What I do is I get in the car, ask my wife if she needs anything in town, and I drive to the grocery store, 15 minutes. And I say, I'm going to commit as many acts of kindness as I can in the next 10 or 15 minutes. And then I look around. How can I leave this situation? And wouldn't you know, somebody will show up 2, 3 cars away, putting their last grocery bag in the car. Excuse me, would you like me to return that for you? Oh, that'd be great. I'm already smiling. I make them laugh. Walk to the store, give it to somebody else because I don't need it. And I go into car salesman mode and make them laugh because they just think I'm some weird guy. The hand grip's all warmed up and the wheels hardly wobble. You'll love it. Go in and make
That's
people laugh and leave. Every time I come home, I'm better. And every time I walk out of the store, I look up and wink and I go, okay, I was supposed to be here. We're good.
And a lot of people don't feel like they can make a difference in the world. And when they're thinking about making a difference, maybe they're thinking of, oh my gosh, I need to be a billionaire so I can give $500 million to this company, or I need to, I don't know, be Mother Teresa to somebody. It's not necessarily that. It's what you're talking about. Eyes up. All right, where can I do just a little bit of good in the next few minutes?
Exactly. And we all have the ability, and you just said the perfect words, eyes up.
Mm,
And I get it. Not
yeah.
everybody has an easy life. Believe me, I've had some very tough days, and I'm sure there'll be more in the future. I mean, gosh, that's how I keep growing and getting better and getting more stories. But so many people walk around either staring at their phone or staring at their shoes, complaining that nothing good has happened. There's no opportunities out there. And we
Mm,
see it every single time. And it's happening again now at the time of this recording that one of the big lotteries is close to $1 billion.
yeah.
And you see the people in line at the 7-Eleven or wherever they go to buy their thing. And there's some very young news reporter there going, hey, if you win, what are you going to do? And everybody says, I'm going to help the homeless. And you know what they're doing is what I've always referred to. I've got a whole stage story called Bribing God for Lottery Numbers, because you say you're going to do something good, but how many of those people, after they don't win, will still actually do something to help the homeless? And in
Mhm.
January of 2016, when Powerball, I believe it was, hit $1 billion for the first time, when it was at 900 million, I saw those people on TV and I got so frustrated. I went into my computer, I found a downloadable stock art picture of a hand coming out of the darkness. And I wrote, "You don't need to win the Powerball to give back and help those in need. For $1.85, you can buy a loaf of bread. 79 cents for a can of tuna. Granola bars are cheap. A pair of warm gloves could save a life, and you already own a coat you don't wear. So stop it." Reach out in your community, see what you can do. And I slam dunked it onto Facebook. And the next day it had 1,000 likes. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's viral for me. Within 11 days, it had 4.1 million views.
Oh, wow.
53,500 people shared it. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, was I just picked to be a messenger or what? you know, and some people were saying, where are those prices? Like, hey, here in New Hampshire. But other people, what happened was they said, hey, Steve, I saw your thing. It made me laugh. Oh, by the way, I reached out to a shelter today and I'm bringing them some canned goods tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And I just sat here, goosebumped to the elbows, tears in my eyes, smiling and looking up and going, okay, all right. I was supposed to create and share that. Okay. And I've had a couple of more instances like that over the years where something that just hit my heart in a moment just exploded in growth. And what I love most is the people who got the message, who did something with it.
Yes. And, even if it was only one out of every 100 people that liked that actually physically did something, imagine the impact that made. And that is, the positive thing about social media. And that is also what drives me as well, man. I just want to put positive things out there. I want to encourage people. I want people to know that there is a better tomorrow. And I know that is something that's on your heart as well. You kind of mentioned that, that typical disc jockey, maybe a little bit of a performer, things like that. What first got you in that mode of thinking, hey, DJ would be a really fun thing to do. Let me try my hand at that, and actually being pretty successful at it.
Yeah. When I was 11 years old, and I'm dating myself here big time, I wanted to be a radio DJ because of Dr. Johnny Fever on WKRP in Cincinnati. I wanted to be a stand-up comedian because of Steve Martin, who was huge at the time in the late
Yeah.
70s. Because our mom instilled a love of reading and writing in my sister and myself, I wanted to be an author of my own books. And I also wanted to be a teacher of people, but not in a classroom, because I had an incredible fifth grade teacher named Mrs. Farron, who, when I finished my work early, would encourage me to help some of the other students and coach them a little bit and mentor them a
Mm.
little bit. And I fell in love with how that made me feel, sharing something that inspired somebody else to really enjoy what we were doing and maybe figure out a challenge or an issue. I loved all of that. Now, I was a very shy, introverted kid. I am by nature an introvert, which makes everybody laugh, but it's true. Got embarrassed brutally in the seventh grade spelling bee, and my confidence just hit the dirt. And
Ooh.
I stopped raising my hand in class, and I went from all A's up to seventh grade, just trailing smoke until I
Mm.
graduated from college by 62 one thousandths of a point with zero confidence. My dad's favorite joke during my stand-up comedy years was, hey, yeah, my son graduated summa cum this close. That was his favorite joke, and he kept reminding me of it. I'm like, yeah, Dad, I remember. I was there. I had to drive to the school the day before graduation to see if I should show up.
And it's interesting that, like you said, it was that kind of that one moment, and then you just couldn't really regain that confidence or that belief in yourself, it sounds like.
Oh, so true. And the weirdest thing, and I didn't even remember that incident in the spelling bee until my mid 30s, at which point I just
Hmm.
looked in the mirror and went, really? That? I let that sit there and just fester all these years and didn't even know why. I mean, this was after my radio career that
Hmm.
I rediscovered this when I was a speaker. And it goes to kind of like what my life coach did for me. Was I had a friend who, gosh, all through our teens and into early 20s, I was 24, he was 23, and my friend Danny asked me when I was living broke and depressed on my grandfather's couch, 2 years out of college, why didn't you ever follow your dream of being on the radio? You love music.
Mm.
You know more about it than any of us. You always talked about it and you were happy then and you're miserable. Why didn't you do anything about it? And out of excuses and out of money and out of whatever else, I borrowed $4,000 from my grandfather, whose couch I was living on, completely broke, and went to
Wow.
broadcast school in the summer of 92. Got an internship at a rock station we'd grown up listening to. Internships pay nothing, by the way. And I drove to my friend's house, and he was so proud. And of course, I got the "I told you so" speech.
Sure.
And he passed away 3 weeks later.
Mm. Oh,
He
wow.
died of cancer.
Wow.
And it took me 10 years of radio to get the lesson. Now, I still didn't have the confidence. You know, I was a rock morning show producer, I was a copywriter. I didn't use my voice on the radio until year 8 out of 10, only because I had to,
Wow. Mm.
because our morning guy quit. And the
Mm.
owner was going to take the live radio aspect out that we had created and put it back on satellite. And I raised my hand and go, guys, I've been in radio for 8 years. In parentheses in my head, I'm saying, never been on the mic, but I left that part out. And I just started doing it. And I was terrible for 5 days. And on Friday morning at 5 minutes of 7, I basically said, hey, everybody, this is Steve, New Hampshire's classic rock, Big 101.5. You know, I may stink as a DJ, but if you tolerate me reading the weather for the next 42 seconds, I'll play you a really good rock song. And my boss leaned his head in the door with a huge smile and said, why can't you sound like that all the time? Brother, just be yourself. That was the funniest thing you said all week. Be yourself.
Mm. Yeah.
That was 22 years ago, right before I
Mm.
left radio.
Mm-hmm.
And that another moment that has radically impacted my life.
All right. So I want to get into this visualization thing. You are a visualization coach. You've developed your own program. Visualization is something that on the periphery, I'm a little bit familiar with, but certainly not like you are, and certainly not a practice that I've expressly put in into my life. So, where did that passion come from? Tell us about that, and tell us about what we need to do in order to make that work for our lives.
It has been quite a journey, and it started with that same life coach just about 20 years ago when I did decide to become a speaker and started going to Toastmasters to put together what would become my stage stories. He asked me if I had ever heard of The Secret because it had just come out on DVD and was big on the law of attraction. And he said, I think you're such a creative person. I think you'd be able to relate to it. Now, some of the things in The Secret, like the genie and the magic lamp, I just left, okay, come on. We know that's not real. We know God is real, universe is real, energy is real. Law of attraction, all it is putting your energy out there in the world to increase the odds that like energy will return, which is why I put good energy out there as best I can.
Mm.
In the 98-minute DVD, there were 3 minutes of some guy named John Assaraf, who I'd never heard of before. And he talked about this thing called the vision board, where he had pictures of goals that he wanted to achieve on a board. Now, most of his were material things, a house, a car, jewelry, stuff like that. But I started, as I learned more and did some deep dives into personal development and a lot of journaling, I started to look at all the different areas of life because I've never just been about money.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a standard life wheel out there and I adapted it to what I teach and what I talk about. And basically 8 areas of life: your physical health, your emotional well-being, your relationships, the core values that guide you, your faith and spirituality that do the same from a different direction, but they do the same, your connection to the world in a real way, and then your career and your money. And I thought, well, I don't want to just write a letter to Santa Claus for all these material things I want. And I did create 2 vision boards when I started. They were all material things. And 3 weeks later, I looked at them and went, ugh.
Yeah.
I want a real life. I want a full, complete life. So I started to write lists. All right, if I set one goal for each area of my life, what would it look like or feel like or sound like or smell like or taste like? How can I attach my senses? and then started to come up with a compelling why for each, because the why is the gas in your tank that'll keep a pebble from becoming a Jersey barrier. If you don't have a real deep commitment to something and the wind blows the wrong way, you're off course. So that started to work into it. And all these little bits and pieces, and I found that I started to create these little successes in my life. And then you're standing on those bricks, you can look higher, dig
Mhm.
deeper, and then you realize how all of these 8 areas are actually working together 24/7 anyway. So wouldn't it be a good idea to improve as many of them as possible? And I just started to build, and then other people started to see the wins that I was talking about and asked me if I could teach them. And I started speaking at companies about it and doing big events at companies with vision boards. And somebody said, "Hey, Steve, I can't afford to pay you to come in. I'm just by myself. Can you create a program?" And the only answer to that is, you know what, we're working on that. It hasn't quite been finished yet, but we'll let you know when.
Right,
And then you
exactly.
grab a pen and you write, create a program for individuals. That's how it works in this industry for anybody that thinks we all are already working on things. And by virtue of me becoming the best version of me that I could be and being genuine, authentic, and transparent out there, what's working, what's not, highs and lows, here I am. And
Mm.
it's been an incredible journey. And I just encourage people to think in their heads, what do my goals look like, feel like, sound like, smell like, taste like? Just create the ultimate version of everything. So in your gut, in your heart, in your mind, in your faith, you can do this. The ways will show themselves.
I feel like you said, a lot of times it's material things, the boat or the money. And then it's relationships, which can be very fruitful. Okay, relationships are awesome, but then also it's like we're always trying to fulfill this need to be with someone, so we are something. But I love that it goes beyond that. Relationships are important. Okay, money is important. I acknowledge that. But there are six other parts of it in your mind, and that's only a quarter of the pie over here. There are so many more things that we can build to have a fruitful, successful life.
And if you improve one, you have the opportunity, without even thinking about it, to improve all of them. And somebody
Mm,
challenged me on that recently. Well, Steve, I want to do a separate board. I can't just do 8 things. I said, why not? And said, look, if you take care of your physical health by choosing better foods and getting
mm,
enough sleep, you wake up more focused with better energy. You wake up more
yeah.
focused with better energy. You can work harder and more efficiently. You do that, you can make more money. You make more money, you can buy back a little freedom and time and spend time with the people in your closest relationships. Oh, and by the way, if you conduct your business in such a way that it goes along with your core values and that whatever you choose to believe in for your faith, that's going to create more better emotional rewards for you as well. And your connection with people is going to be better because you're never looking over your shoulder wondering what you said to anybody.
Mm,
I said, and all that started by getting enough sleep and taking better care of yourself physically. And they went,
wow.
oh,
I bet some people can
legit.
get,
That's how
there,
simple it can be.
yeah. Yeah, this gentleman was like, only 8 things. And then there are some people that are probably like, 8 things, that's a ton. But at the same time, like you said, if you just take one step, it can cascade into big things. And what helps people take that first step? How do you help people take that first step when they're just feeling stuck?
I love having conversations with people, and I call my style of coaching playing volleyball. I'll ask them a question. I say, well, hey, all right, what was a really good part of your life? Like, what's one of your favorite memories? And they'll say, well, I kind of want to do this. I did it a long time ago, but I got away from it. Oh, great. What was your favorite thing about it? And then I'll look at them on the screen because I do a lot with Zoom. I'll watch their face on the screen and go, oh my gosh, if you could see what your face just did, you just
Yeah.
lit up when you were talking about that. So let's go into that. Maybe you can't do it at the level you did prior, but how could you tap back into that in some way? And they're like, well, I don't know this. And at the end, I said, do you realize we just played the greatest game of volleyball? We sent that thing back and forth, back and forth. I used to play volleyball when I was in college. What I loved the most were those long volleys where somebody would
Hmm.
think it was over and they'd kind of miss, but somebody else would save it and would just trickle over the net. Another person would dive and dig it out. I didn't care who got the point at the end of it. I was just honored to be a part of that volley. I said, we just did that. And at the end, one of us spikes it, but we both win. And take that energy and take that passion and take that belief in yourself that you can create that level of energy again, and you can enjoy that feeling again, maybe doing something else, but take your love and passion with you into something else. Now, I can't do what I used to do at age 55 now, what I did when I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
But everything I loved about what I did, I've taken into what I do now on stages, in coaching calls, writing books, in conversations like this on shows. I've been on 200 plus shows around the world in the past 5 or 6 years. I love this. This is passion to me, and this is a
Yeah.
blast because we never know how far the ripples go, which is why I'm always honored when I'm asked to be on somebody's show.
We appreciate you being on, and it definitely falls right in line with what we're talking about, which is it is not about where you've been; it's about where you're headed. I want to hear about your relationship with Tina, and there are some people listening to our show that might be in between relationships. They're maybe even thinking, "Hey, I'm giving up on the opposite sex or on relationships in general. It's just not for me." What's your story with you and Tina?
It's funny you say it that way because an hour ago, I typed out my account, the very bare bones account of our story to somebody who said, "Hey, if you've been, in a failed relationship or had a divorce, how did you rebound?" And I just type. Got divorced in, 2002-ish, and intentionally did not go on a single date for more than a year because I wanted to become the best version of myself that I knew I needed to be for my true love. I only wanted to have one more, the relationship in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I started writing and I started reading. Then I learned visualization. So I started to include on my vision boards images of couples enjoying the type of relationship that I wanted to enjoy. Holding hands walking on a beach, leaning against the railing of a ship together at sunset, because I am a hopeless, helpless romantic and I love that stuff. Guy piggybacking his girl through a brook so she doesn't get wet and they're all laughing. A couple cooking dinner together in their kitchen and smiling and laughing. And I said, this is everything I want. And in January of 2007, that year's vision board, I said, this will be the year that I discover her.
Mm.
And in early June, I wrote in my journal, I am ready to fall in love. And on June 16th, I got an email from someone named Tina that I came this close to deleting it because I thought it was spam. And
Yeah.
something shiny happened, and all the squirrels in my head said, hey, let's go over here and do this now. The next day I opened it, I realized it was a girl I'd gone to high school with.
Wow.
And at that time, she was living in Florida. We hadn't seen or spoken to each other in 21 years. She would not send a picture, nor did she have a social media footprint.
Wow.
And 4 weeks later, via email, text, and phone calls, I was remembering I had a crush on her for 3 years in high school and never had the guts to ask her out. In almost
Wow.
4 weeks to the day from the original email, I was DJing a wedding where I wasn't even supposed to be, even though we know I was supposed to be, but I
Right.
wasn't
Right.
originally the
Yeah.
DJ scheduled. During dinner time, we were texting and she said, can I tell you something if you promise not to freak out? And I said, sure. Here's how I really felt about you in high school. Here's how I felt the day I saw your name, when I got your email, when I heard your voice. I love you.
Wow.
And I thought,
Wow.
wow. And I texted back, I love you too.
Oh my
And we
gosh.
recently celebrated our 16th anniversary. And the law of attraction, God, universe, stepped in so many times because several months later, I flew down to see her, or she flew up here because her grandmother was having surgery. About 3 weeks after that, we saw each other for the first time in 21 plus years.
Wow.
And I just fell in love with her all over again right there at the airport. Gave her our first kiss. And we flew back and forth. And a few months later, she goes, I don't want to quit my job, but I really want to move back to New England to be with you. And a few weeks later, she sends me a message. I think this is that law of attraction thing you talk about because my company just offered to move me to Vermont, which is only 2.5 hours from where I am. Give me a raise, create a whole new position for me, and pay for an apartment for a month.
Wow.
She says, is that whole vision board thing? I go, yes. And it's been a series of those ever since. And this is the happiest I've ever been in my life. And this is also the best version of me that's ever been in a relationship. And we're still learning each other, love languages, habits, how to honor each other. We're
Hmm.
still learning. And it's an amazing journey because this is the most open and honest version of me there's ever been.
I love that story. I love the hopeless romantic aspect of it. Man, I love everything about that story. And now everybody's that's single is thinking about that crush they had in high school and wondering if they're single themselves. So may throw a couple lines out there. You never know. But
No. Got me
what
invited
a
onto Oprah's radio network 4 times, and Tina still says, "You realize you're the chick in this relationship, right?" And I always laugh. I go, she goes, "Well, you remember all the anniversary dates and everything. We have 3 anniversaries. We have the email, the Wi-Fi, and the I got to see ya finally
right, right.
anniversary." And I know them all every year. And I always joke with her. I said, "Babe, if you ever end our relationship, you are going to demolish my speaking career." She goes, "Oh, I know." And then she
Oh,
starts laughing.
yeah. I hope she charges a commission then for all the material she's given you for sure.
Oh man. And the funny thing is she will not come hear me speak. She loves our story, but she would get so embarrassed she would turn 20 shades of red. And I say, "Babe, we're gonna get on Oprah." I mean, we got on Oprah's radio network 4 times talking with her friends who were the hosts of their
Hmm.
shows.
Hmm.
And I said, "We're gonna get on an Oprah Law of Attraction special." She goes, "Well, I'm wearing a paper bag." I'm like, "Babe, you can't. You're the cute one."
Exactly. They're paying to see you. Let's be honest here.
Oh, everybody loves Tina, and so many people, if I just type, because I always call her my Tina, and
Mhm.
everybody loves that. And it just means so much more when I do that. Well, if I ever leave out the my, people call me out on social media. "What's the matter? Is something wrong? What did you do?" "What do you mean? You didn't say my Tina. You just said Tina." I'm like, "Let me go fix that."
Reminds me of Bob Goff and Sweet Maria. How Bob Goff is always calling his wife Sweet Maria. I love that. And it's just so sweet. I love to hear about that, man. That's just great. So, this is something I want to start asking all of my guests if I feel like they can handle it, and I feel like you can handle it, Steve. So I'm patting you on the back here, and I'm building you up. I want to know where you're going because we're never a finished product, right? So where are you going? Where are you headed next? Hey, what's on your vision board right now?
I actually just finished my most recent vision board, and it is the wildest, most ambitious one I've ever done. And I look at it every day and ask myself, what one step can I take toward one goal today?
Mm-hmm.
Biggest ones for me professionally are getting the Vision Board Mastery Program into companies who operate with a mindset that personal and professional development go hand in hand to blow their businesses up and to create the best versions of their team members who sit in those seats every day. Whether there's 1,000 people in that company or 8, these are the families I want to start getting that message into. We're launching a new coaching platform where I'm going to be doing one-on-one coaching with a limited number of people per month, and also a group coaching program where people can plug in twice a month and keep their journeys going, not just make a board, set it, and forget it. On the
Right.
personal side, of course, me and my Tina, but also the health journey that I've been on for the past 27 months. I weighed 247 pounds at the time, was drinking a very tall rum and coke to relax every night, and it put on a lot of weight. And I haven't had a drop of alcohol in about 27 months. I'm down to this morning, I was 223 pounds. I will be pedaling at least 2,700 miles this year. It's probably going to be closer to
Wow.
3,000 on our Peloton cycle. In all of these ways, my family and I have a 501c3 that started as a hippie giving movement called Beach Bum Philanthropy. We've got big giving goals for that as well. And in just creating this amazing version of my life with tracking systems here and there throughout the board. So I'm also tracking my progress, which is a great booster when you start to see that you're coloring in the results
Mm-hmm.
of the efforts that you make every day. And of course, me and my Tina are right there in the center with my favorite picture of us and my hand on one of her feet because I give her a foot rub every night. after dinner while we're watching TV before we go to bed. All these little things. There's a note there that one day she asked, "Babe, the weather's supposed to be bad. Could you drive me to my nail appointment tonight?" And I said, "Well, I was going to build a new stand for our TV upstairs." And she went, "Okay." And she went out to get the mail, and I thought, okay, hold on, there's a lesson here. So I grabbed a scrap of paper as fast as I could, and I wrote, "I would rather have my hubby," did a box, "drive me to my nail appointment," and another box, "build the stand for the TV," and I left a red marker and put it on her desk. Half an hour later, when I came back up from the recording studio, it said, "I would rather have my hubby drive me to my nail appointment."
Oh.
The picture of that note is on my vision board to remember her love language every day.
Absolutely.
See, it doesn't just have to be these huge things. It's how do you build the best version of yourself every day? What do you want, but who do you want to be? Because that's just as important, who you become, not just what you get.
Come on. That's what I keep saying, and that's what I keep adding to the end of it. It's not just about where you're going, it's about who you're becoming in all of it. And it's those little choices we make along the way that help build. Those are the building blocks of who we're becoming. So if somebody wanted to catch up with you, Steve, and be a part of what you're doing, you've got an awesome podcast, by the way. Please plug that too. It is an outstanding podcast. So tell us about your podcast and anything else, anywhere else that we'd find you.
Yeah, my podcast is called Motivational Firewood Radio, and it does have that little trademark. I spent a lot of money for that little icon there that goes with Motivational Firewood, and I have to use it everywhere.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for about 16 years, and it is such an extension of just who I am and how I am. And I love to just share those little brief shows with people. And you can find me and the podcast links at stevegamlin.com, Gamlin. And everything is there. My speaking, the vision board, the coaching, the podcast, and some really cool products as well that I've created over the years.
I love that. Steve, thank you so much for being a part of the show today. Really appreciate all the lessons that you've shared with us. And, you've challenged me. I got to get on this vision board thing and figure out which of these girls from high school I need to start dating.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Gosh, we had such an amazing phone conversation prior to this.
Yes, we did.
And I knew as soon as, 2 minutes into that phone call, I go, oh, we've got to do this. And you were already ahead of me. You already had the date and time written down. So an honor. It was truly an honor to be a part of this. We just played volleyball, and it was amazingly effortless. And the cool part is, just like what I mentioned earlier, we both win.
Absolutely, we do. Steve, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to Steve Gamlin for being a part of the show this week, and we cannot wait to bring another show to you next week. You're on the Where You're Going podcast, so make sure you subscribe, get the alerts every time we put out a new show. We want you to have it just as soon as possible, whether it be on YouTube or iTunes or Spotify, wherever you get your show. And make sure to share this with somebody if it's meant something to you. Thanks again for listening to the show. It's not about where you've been. It's about where you're going and who you're becoming. We'll talk to you next week.